I was just minding my own business when Karen, the notorious HOA enforcer, turned a simple car wash into a full-blown neighborhood battle. As tensions soar and secrets unravel, will I be able to reclaim the peace of my own home? Welcome to our channel. Please subscribe if you want more Karen and HOA stories. I was washing my car on a warm Saturday afternoon when a loud shout shattered the calm. In that moment, everything changed. I had no idea that a simple car wash on my own driveway could stir up such anger in our quiet neighborhood. As I scrubbed away, I heard the hurried steps of someone storming toward my house. It was Karen. Karen was known around the neighborhood for being overbearing and always insisting that things be done her way. In her eyes, I was breaking some rule that only she could see. My heart pounded as Karen stopped right in front of me, her face red with anger. She barked, "You can't let my parents use your driveway for their car wash." Her voice was loud and filled with a kind of power I had never seen before. I tried to explain that I was just cleaning my own car and that I had every right to use my driveway. But Karen would not listen. Even in my calm state, I felt a flicker of worry. How could a car wash cause so much trouble? That first moment was the spark that lit a fire. I knew that if I let this slide, more problems would come my way. I decided then that I must understand all the details of the situation. So I began my own research. I went online and looked up the neighborhood rules and the property maps that showed exactly where each house's boundaries lay. I learned that my driveway was clearly marked as my property. The rules were written down in small print, but they were clear. I could use my driveway as I wished, as long as I did not hurt anyone else's property. I saved copies of these documents, knowing that having them would be useful later. I made sure to keep my voice calm and friendly, even when I felt upset inside. I thought, if I can show the truth, maybe I can calm down this angry storm. I began writing down everything I experienced that day, from the moment I started washing my car until Karen had stormed off in frustration. I did not want to miss a single detail, because I knew that every fact would be important. A few minutes after Karen left, I heard the distant sound of a siren. I looked up and saw flashing blue lights in the driveway. I felt a cold drop of fear. I never expected the situation to become so serious that the police would be called. I stood there, my hands still covered in soap, wondering how a simple car wash had become a community drama. I recalled that I had seen news stories about similar incidents in other neighborhoods, and I knew then that sometimes a small disagreement could turn into a big, messy fight. I took a deep breath and went back inside my house to calm my racing thoughts. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and began to type notes. I wanted to capture every detail. The exact time of Karen's arrival, her angry words, and even the way her eyes shone with a kind of pride and entitlement. I was determined to gather all the evidence I could, and I even started recording a short video of my driveway that day. I knew that if this story spread, the truth must be known. In the back of my mind, I recalled the lessons I had learned about the law and property rights. I remembered a time when a teacher explained that our rights as homeowners were protected by written rules. With that memory, I felt a sense of responsibility. I had to stand up for myself, not with anger, but with facts and a calm determination. I was like a detective piecing together a puzzle, and every piece of information made the picture clearer. As the day turned into evening, the neighborhood grew quiet again, but the tension in the air was still there. I couldn't help but think about the eyes of my neighbors watching the drama unfold from their windows. I wondered if they felt as uneasy as I did. Some of them had been known for doing little things that sometimes annoyed others, like playing loud music late at night or leaving their trash out. But today, their whispers felt different. They were discussing the matter as if it were a scandal, and I realized that this event had become much bigger than just a car wash. I decided to call my friend Alex, who had some knowledge about local laws and even had experience with disputes like these. Alex listened carefully as I explained everything, nodding as he asked questions and taking notes. "You need to document everything and be prepared to show the property maps and the rules," he advised. His calm voice gave me strength, and I knew that I wasn't alone in this fight. I promised myself that I would not back down, even if it meant facing Karen and her supporters again. Later that night, I received an unexpected email from a local news reporter. The email said they had heard about the unusual incident and were interested in my side of the story. I felt a mix of shock and fear. The idea of my story reaching many people was both exciting and scary. It meant that the truth about what had happened might get out, but it also meant that I was stepping into a bigger world of public opinion. I spent a long time deciding what to say, choosing my words carefully so that I would not reveal too much yet. I wanted to keep people curious, to have them listen to every detail I would share next. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, knowing that tomorrow might bring more challenges. I could still see Karen's angry face in my mind, and I wondered what her next move would be. Would she call the police again? Or would she rally the other neighbors to join her cause? I thought about all the research I had done, the property maps I had saved, and the legal knowledge that supported my rights. I felt prepared, but I also knew that sometimes the truth gets twisted, when people are caught up in their emotions. Before I drifted off to sleep, I stared out of my window at the quiet street. I knew that the battle was only just beginning. The incident on my driveway was a small crack in the wall of our community, and I feared that it might grow into something much larger and more painful. My mind buzzed with questions and worries. But one thing was clear: I had to be brave. I had to stand up for what was right, not just for myself, but for everyone who believed in fairness and honesty. As I closed my eyes that night, I remembered the advice of my teacher who always said, "Facts are the light in the darkness." I clung to that thought, determined to let the light of truth guide me through the challenges ahead. The journey would not be easy, but I was ready. I promised myself that I would use every tool at my disposal: research, property maps, legal advice, and even the power of media, to make sure that justice was served. Little did I know, this was only the start of a story that would change my life and our neighborhood forever. In those early moments of the evening, I made a silent vow. I would not let Karen's anger and entitlement push me into a corner. I would stand tall and fight for what was mine. Even as the night grew dark, my resolve shone bright. I knew that with every step I took, I was building a case that would eventually shine a light on the truth, no matter how many obstacles lay in my path. The first act of this unfolding drama had set the stage for a battle of wills, where facts and fairness would have to triumph over entitlement and bluster. And so, as I lay there in the quiet of the night, I prepared myself for whatever came next. I had the evidence, I had the knowledge, and most of all, I had the determination to see this through. Even if I had to face angry neighbors, meddling officials, or even more unexpected twists, I knew that I was fighting not just for my car wash, but for the right to live peacefully in my own home. The night was deep, and the future uncertain, but my story was just beginning, and I was ready to write every page. I remember the day when everything took a new turn. I was still shaken by the shock of Karen dialing 911 over my driveway. I woke up that morning with a heavy heart, wondering what could possibly happen next. Right away, I knew I had to protect my home and my rights. I felt both nervous and determined. I had to learn more about the rules and maps of our property. I spent my first morning with a cup of tea and a stack of papers, looking at the property maps that showed exactly where my driveway ended and where the public space began. I could not believe that Karen, with her loud and demanding voice, would try to change something that was clearly mine. That day, as I sat at my desk, I found a spark of hope in the details written in the documents. The maps were clear. My driveway was my space. I also read a few pages from the HOA rulebook, which stated that every homeowner had the right to use their own property as they wished, as long as they did not harm others. These facts were my first step in building a case against Karen's wrongful claim. The discovery felt like a small victory, and it gave me the strength to stand up to her overbearing ways. Later that afternoon, while I was sorting through more papers, my neighbor Mr. Thompson knocked on my door. He had a worried look on his face and told me that Karen had been speaking to several other neighbors about how I was changing the rules. Her words were harsh and hurtful, and I could see that her anger was spreading like wildfire. Mr. Thompson said he had always liked me because I always tried to keep things fair and calm. His support meant a lot to me, but it also made me realize that this problem could get bigger if I didn't act fast. I decided to take the next step and visit the local library. I needed to learn even more about property laws and find past records of similar cases. In the library, I sat at a quiet table and read through books and online articles about homeowners' rights. The language was sometimes a bit tricky, but I took my time and made simple notes on what I learned. I discovered that many people had stood up to similar complaints by using maps and official documents. I felt like I was not alone in this fight anymore. Each piece of information made me more confident that I was right and that I deserved peace in my own home. During my research, I also found some news articles about other neighborhoods that had faced disputes with the HOA. They talked about how community voices had come together to solve problems, and some cases even made it to the local news. The idea of media exposure was interesting. I started to think that maybe sharing my story could help others, and also put pressure on the HOA to do the right thing. I took careful notes and saved a few articles on my computer. Every new fact I uncovered was like a little light in the dark, guiding me through a maze of rules and angry words. One sunny morning, while I was walking down the street, I saw Karen at her usual spot near the community center. She was talking loudly to a group of neighbors, her tone as sharp as a knife. I could hear snippets of her speech. She was claiming that my driveway was being used in a way that harmed the community. My heart pounded, but I kept a calm face. I knew that this was just another part of her plan to push her way into a decision. I took out my phone and made a quiet note of the conversation, hoping to remember every detail. I also noticed that a few of the neighbors seemed confused by her words. They looked around and whispered among themselves. I wondered if they, too, might learn the truth from my research. That evening, I met with a small group of neighbors who had been affected by Karen's demands. We sat in my living room, and I shared what I had learned from the property maps and the HOA rulebook. I explained that my driveway was clearly marked as my own, and that there was no rule allowing Karen's parents to use it for a car wash. The room was quiet at first, but soon a gentle murmur of agreement filled the space. One neighbor, Lisa, mentioned that she had seen similar markings on her own property and that the documents had always worked in her favor. Another neighbor, Jim, said he was proud of me for standing up for what was right. Their support made me feel like a little spark of truth was beginning to catch fire in our community. Over the next few days, I collected every bit of evidence I could find. I printed out the property maps, made copies of the HOA rules, and even recorded my conversations with Mr. Thompson and some other neighbors. I wanted to have a strong case when I eventually needed to speak up at the next HOA meeting. I also started to write a careful summary of what had happened, step by step, so that I would not forget any important detail. My goal was to be clear and honest, showing that I was only trying to protect my home and respect the community rules. Just when I thought I had everything under control, an unexpected twist came. A local journalist named Sam approached me on the street. He had heard bits of the story and was curious about what was really going on. Sam's eyes were kind, and he promised to help me share the facts with the public in a fair way. At first, I was scared that this might make things even worse. However, I realized that a fair story in the media might help clear up all the misunderstandings and even force the HOA to listen to reason. With his gentle encouragement, I agreed to meet him for an interview. The day of the interview arrived, and I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Sam asked me simple questions about my property and the strange complaint that had started all this. I explained in plain words how I had studied the property maps and read the HOA rules to understand my rights. I talked about the evidence I had gathered and how I felt that Karen's actions were harming the community spirit. Sam listened carefully and took notes. He said that he would write an article that told my story clearly and simply, so that everyone, even a fourth grader, could understand the truth. The thought of the truth being shared with many people made me feel like I was winning a small battle against an unjust system. That night, as I sat at my table with the papers spread out, I felt a surge of determination. I knew that Karen would not let go easily, and I expected more heated meetings and angry words. But I also knew that I had the facts and the support of my neighbors. Every map, every rule, every piece of evidence I collected was like a shield against the storm of entitlement that Karen had brought. I even made copies of the documents so that I could hand them out if needed. I felt like a detective, slowly piecing together a puzzle that would reveal the true picture of my rights and the unfair demands of Karen. In the days that followed, whispers of my growing research began to spread through the neighborhood. I saw people nodding as they passed by, and I heard a few kind words from neighbors who had once been afraid to speak up. Even some who were unsure of their own rights started to ask me questions about the property maps and the legal rules of our HOA. I shared what I knew with a warm smile and careful explanations, always keeping my words simple and honest. I wanted everyone to understand that this was not just about one driveway, but about fairness and respect in our little community. Every time I talked to someone, I made sure to leave a hint of mystery about what might come next. I would say, "You wouldn't believe what I found out last night," or, "There is one more thing in these maps that I am still trying to figure out." These little hooks made my neighbors listen more closely and wait eagerly for the next update. Even when Karen tried to interrupt our gatherings with her loud voice, I would calmly show the documents I had collected and explain the simple facts. It was like building a wall of truth against her angry words. I continued to meet with Sam, the journalist, to give him more details about what had happened. Every time we talked, he promised that the full story would soon be known by everyone. The idea of media exposure made me feel like a beacon of truth, ready to shine light on the unfairness that had plagued my home for so long. But I was careful not to reveal too much too soon. I wanted to keep a little mystery alive so that everyone would be curious about what I had discovered next. It was like leaving a puzzle half solved, inviting others to come closer and learn more. As I moved forward with my research and preparation, I felt both the weight of responsibility and a growing sense of hope. I knew that Karen would try to fight back with all her might, and that the HOA might be swayed by her loud claims if they did not see the clear evidence in the maps and rules. But I also knew that truth and fairness had a way of winning, even when things seemed dark. Every new document I studied, every friendly conversation I had with a neighbor, and every encouraging word from Sam made me more confident that I was on the right side. And so, with my papers neatly organized and my heart steady, I prepared for the next challenge. I promised myself that I would keep working, keep learning, and keep sharing the truth, no matter how hard it got. The next steps were unknown, and I felt the thrill of both fear and excitement. What would Karen do next? How would the HOA react when they saw all the facts I had gathered? I did not have all the answers yet, but I knew that my calm, steady approach was the best weapon against entitlement and injustice. I ended the day with a deep breath and a quiet smile, knowing that every step I took was a step toward a fair resolution. I was not alone. I had the support of my neighbors, the strength of the law, and a clear truth shining in my documents. I closed my eyes, wondering what the next day would bring, and feeling a spark of hope that the truth would win over anger. The moment I stepped into the meeting room, my heart pounded like a drum. I saw Karen sitting at the front, her eyes blazing with anger, and I knew this would not be an ordinary meeting. I clutched a folder filled with property maps, legal notes, and news clips, proof of my rights and hard work. I spoke clearly, explaining that my driveway was mine by law, and I showed everyone the maps that marked our property lines. I read from the rules the HOA had set, and I could see a few surprised faces in the crowd. Karen interrupted with loud claims that her family deserved special treatment, but I stayed calm and kept speaking. I explained how I had spent hours researching, using legal knowledge to back up my words, and even reached out to the media to share my story. Every fact I presented made it harder for anyone to ignore the truth. The room fell silent as the evidence spoke for itself. I wondered if Karen's anger would fade under the weight of these facts, or if her demands would only grow louder. My determination shone through each word, knowing I had built a case that could not be easily dismissed.